Hello, my name is Jeremiah Harris, and I am doing a recommendation report for the Metzger Community Committee. The title of this is going to be called The Right Pond for Metzger Park. The Metzger Community Committee wants to construct a pond at Metzger Park and has asked the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife for guidance in their pursuit. I was asked by ODF&W to construct a recommendation report for the Metzger Community Committee. I used the Mount Hood Community College library database to find a couple of the sources for the recommendation report, and then I found a couple sources using Google search in order to make sure that I was getting something that goes hand in hand with what I'm trying to research. I also listened to lectures in class through the fisheries department in fisheries techniques on pond construction and maintenance and other uses for ponds as well. I have printed material as well in a few of my books from the fisheries department that I needed for classes in order to make this report even more smooth. So for my results, there's benefits of a pond. They are great for recreational and economic value. Uh, it, some of the ways that they're good for recreational is for angler education, and they help bring in different variety of people from the community to view the pond and the park even more, which actually helps with revenue increases for state funding for parks and recreation. And it also has a lot of importance with ecological values as well for fish populations, so there's more diversity and it'll promote people fishing in the areas, so a more dense population can be weeded out of the weak individuals. And it also helps create an added beauty to the park. And it can't just be a hole with water. It needs to have plants around it as well if you want to draw in more people. And one of the biggest parts about all of a pond is that it helps promote wildlife from the smallest forms of wildlife to some of the biggest forms of wildlife. And it does this by providing runoff to avoid flooding and helps create more carbon storage for fish, animals of other variety, and plants during cold or dry seasons as well. Now, there are some disadvantages to having a pond as well. It can be pretty easy for algae to build up if it's not maintained properly. It's really easy to do that if there's a lot of sunlight going into the pond, and if the pond isn't deep enough, it can also be a big issue as well because that means that light is touching the bottom. So if light is touching the bottom of the pond, it makes it a lot easier for algae to grow because they can photosynthesize all the way down as far as the light can touch. If light doesn't touch a specific area, it won't grow anymore. So that, along with poor maintenance, can make it so the mechanics of the pond may stop working. Like if there's a runoff valve in order to prevent overflowing of the pond in certain overflows, the algae can accumulate or debris can accumulate to cause flooding to happen a lot more often. And a really big problem is that it can cost a lot of money to create a pond, especially in maintenance fees, because some of the parts may be pretty expensive if you can't replace them readily. There are also three questions to consider when making a pond. Now, one would be what kind of pond should you build? There's a difference between an excavated or an embankment pond. An excavated pond is a little bit more expensive and depends on the level of the water table, but for local streams, it's easier to make an excavated pond mixed with an embankment pond. An embankment pond pretty much is just a structure built up like a dam that holds water behind it, and you can do a mixture between an excavated and an embankment pond depending on the location. The water supply is also a very important part of it because if you have to constantly pump in water, you have to think how low is the water going to get during a dry season during evaporation? And if it's from a stream, how low does the stream get? And that determines how deep you want your pond to be overall. Another big issue is the soil in the area. If it's too porous or has too much salt, it won't be good to hold water in it, and you may need a liner or some other source. There are also quite a few permits that are involved, and water rights with storage rights. That's kind of a big one. Everybody needs that for ponds. It's to make so if like any rainwater collects in it, or if you're collecting it from a stream, you may need even more special permits for the rights, unless it's directly on the property. So if it's a state park, the you might already have the rights to be able to build a pond there, but you need to have the storage right to hold it there. And then you have to constantly go through DEQ to get water quality certifications to make sure that you're not endangering any of the ponds or other parts of the stream as water is flowing out from the pond to an outlet. Floodplain alteration, you may need that depending on how big the pond is, but that's usually only if you're looking at 1 acre or more of land for a pond. Permits usually have to be updated annually, but depending on what they're used for, you may only have to get them once or twice. So ponds can help recreationally and environmentally. They can be expensive to build and maintain, and maintenance can cause long-term issues including algae overgrowth if not maintained properly. Pond construction shouldn't even begin until the three questions are answered, and permits are required and need to be up to date for environmental and community protection. My recommendation is that Metzger Park should have an excavated pond addition to help increase its value, learning opportunities, and increase the aesthetics and health of the park and community. I think it would be a great addition because the location is okay for the because there's a stream already flowing in, and the pond could be stocked with fish in order to help with learning opportunities for free fishing weekends. And visitors will be able to help enjoy wildlife that will start visiting the pond because it'll help create a cooling area where wildlife and people can sit at and be able to enjoy the park's surroundings. And thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the presentation, and I look forward to hearing about your recommendations and responses. Thank you.